have a look at that if you haven't already. And that's it. I want to then switch and introduce our speaker, who is a very good friend of Freedom's Foundation. He's spoken at the foundation a number of times. I think, Leroy, what are we up to, number 4, number 3?
I think it's 4.
Anyhow, Sergeant Leroy Petry, a Medal of Honor recipient, and I will just cede the floor to him and let him begin.
Good morning, everyone. I know it's a little different this morning. I can't see all of your faces, but I wish we could all be together. First of all, I'll start this off just like I always start, and that is by thanking you all for what you do as teachers. And as a father of 4 and growing up as a brother to 4 other siblings, I know that parents don't always have the time with our children as much as you do while they're growing up from kindergarten all the way through high school, that you all almost see them daily more than we do. And that your impact is tremendous, that we trust you to teach them not only what they learn out of the books, but also survival of life and how to deal with resiliency and so many other aspects. And so I want to thank you for being a part of this, and I want to thank Freedom Foundation, Valley Forge, for giving me the opportunity to share some of my life with you, and how important it is to continue educating these children on values and what it's like to sacrifice, and just all around shape them to be good characters and good citizens of our country. So first, I'll start off with, I know we're doing the global war on terrorism. I joined the military. I had wanted to join since I was about 7 years old. I was watching the news, and you saw some of the heroics from people deploying to Desert Storm, Desert Shield time frame. And I was still a young kid, and I was asking the question, why are these people leaving to go over there and risk their lives and help people that we don't even know? My mom's cousin being one of them, it really started spinning the wheels in my head. And I realized they weren't just going over there to sacrifice for those folks. They were going over there to protect us here at home as well. And I thought about how privileged I was growing up in this country, being free, having all the freedoms that we do enjoy. And I said, one day I want to be able to be like those soldiers that are deploying and stand guard. And I grew up in a free country because many people served our nation and stood ready should they need to deploy. And I just wanted to give that opportunity back to the next generation. So I joined in 1999. I didn't think I was going to make a career out of it, but I know I wanted to serve at least 4 years and give back to what I had benefited from. And when I joined, it was tough. The training was still jungle warfare. We didn't anticipate any war anytime soon. And next thing we know, 9/11 hit. A year and a half later, I just finished not too much training, and I was actually in Ranger School training down in Georgia when the towers were hit. And we were out in the field, and there was a little guard shack that the cadre stood at, and all of us went running, and we wanted to know more information, what's going on. And they looked at us and they said, "Get back out there, keep training, you're probably going to war soon." And little did they know how right they were. And shortly after that, we started deploying to Afghanistan and Iraq, and it seemed part of my thought process was I thought I was going to travel and see the world with the Army. Well, after that, the only thing I saw was Germany on the way to Iraq or Germany on the way to Afghanistan. And being a part of the Rangers was tough. Part of the special operations is we were constantly deploying, and it seemed like 4 months deployed, back for 6 months, 4 months deployed, on a nonstop cycle, sharing it with our other Ranger battalions. And the difficult part was, even when you were home, while you were deployed, you were getting new guys. And when you were home, you were training those new guys to prep them for the next deployment that you knew was coming up. So when you were home, your time was limited at home and you were constantly training. It was almost like you weren't home. You get home late in the evenings, put in long hours, and it meant a great deal. And I talked to a lot of young men and women that are thinking about joining the service or just joined the service or just getting out of the service. And I tell them, I say, you are about to embark on one of the best times of your life because you're going to be surrounded by like-minded people who have initiative and know what it means to be on a team and care about one another, not themselves. And it's tough that they talk about the transition for a lot of service members being difficult. Well, that's because as you get out there in the world, you don't find those values as much. Everyone's like, well, we could get this work done if we stay an extra 30 minutes. Well, we're not getting paid overtime, so let's just go home. And you're like, man, I just want to get this. Where's the pride in getting things completed for the right reason, not because you're getting paid? And so they miss that. And they have a hard time finding that same camaraderie that everybody always talks about with our military, that's what you miss the most. And it's difficult, but we all come together. I know people all over the United States because of my service, and I'm happy. And on my first deployment, it was a little difficult. We were going to Afghanistan, and we weren't really prepared. And I say that physically, we were prepared. We've been training nonstop, hard, but I think mentally, they didn't prepare us fully what to expect. We didn't even really get a good a brief on what Afghanistan was all about. We just knew we were going into this foreign country. We thought maybe we'd be fighting military fighters that were in uniform. Well, it turned out a completely different when we hit the ground, and we were fighting in urban terrain, rural terrain, mud huts, and it was different. In mountainous terrain, desert terrain, you name it. It was raining, it was hot, it was cold, all over that country, different aspects of things that would come down on you. But the one thing we didn't get was a good culture brief. And what I say by that is we didn't understand their culture fully going there. And either that or it wasn't disseminated down to the lower levels to where we didn't understand why when we would go on a target, we were separating the women and children from the men while we questioned them. And it was a big no-no to put your hands on a woman, even if you were just escorting her and moving her around. And we found out that a lot of those women, unfortunately, were abused when we left because they had been touched by another man. And so having that culture, learning that as you go is not the best way, but we adapted to it and we tried to make the most of it. And I used to go back there every now and then. For the past several years, we've been taking wounded veterans back downrange to Afghanistan, and to see what that country is, stuff you can't see on television, and where it's progressed to from my first deployment there in 2002. Yeah, there's still a lot of violence there, but there's people going to schools. There's actually paved roads in the country, more than just two. And it's moving forward. And a lot of the folks that are there, when I would talk to them, they embrace the U.S. being there. They said, we wish Americans could stay here forever. And I'd look at them and I'd say, yeah, it'd be great, but we got to get home to our families. We're here to help you stand on your own and take care of your own. And just to see the country evolve. When I got there the first time, I knew what a third world country was. I'd gone to Mexico as a young kid and with family. And when I got to Afghanistan, I was like, wow, where do they even classify this? Because in certain areas, it was so primitive. They didn't have running water. They didn't have electricity. Up in the mountains of the Hindu Kush Mountains, it was interesting to see the little toddlers, the kids that were maybe 7 years old, with the babies strapped to their back, taking care of the babies while the family was out working, and how they would go to the tops of the mountains to get wood during the summer so that they could get the wood from the lower areas during the winter and not have to go up those mountains. Everything that I saw there, their way of survival just impressed me that they did the most with the least in their hands. We would go to some villages and they would, part of their culture is to feed travelers and house them and take care of them. And small villages up in these mountains in the wintertime, they would feed our entire platoon, about 40 guys, with enough food, plates with just mountains of rice and meat and sacrificed goats and enough food to probably feed that village for a couple months worth of their food they would give to us. And it was interesting when they would sacrifice these goats and to make for us, they would take every piece and use, nothing went to waste. They would take, I know this is a little graphic, but they would take the intestines and they would string them up and tie a knot on them and blow them up into a big circular balloon. And they would tie off the other end and they'd let them dry out. And what they did was they'd clip off the end and they'd interweave sticks around this entire balloon and to make it encased. And they would use it as a water storage. They would put them on like a backpack and they would go down the mountain, down to the river and fill these things with water. And that's how they carried their water back to their homes that were up in the mountains. And just everything I learned was impressive of those people and how they survived. And I think about all of our generations that have gone to war and all the things that we've faced and where we're at today, facing this COVID-19 and adapting to new ways of life. I think a lot of people are missing that human interaction, and we that camaraderie, being around people. And it's great to see folks on a camera, but it's not tangible, and that's what people thrive for, is something tangible. So you could almost feel the warmth of somebody's smile by seeing it in person. And we're doing the best we can. We're adapting. We're hoping to make over this thing, but that's one of the things that I look at is they're starting to test new vaccines. And when I look at this war on terror, and I know I talked more about Afghanistan, but that's where more of my deployments were. And Iraq was pretty good moving forward as far as their economy was built up and more cities and stuff. But the one thing that I look at is the technology and what this has brought to not only the military, but to America for technology from war. And everybody says no one ever wins a war. That's true. There's pluses, positives, and negatives about a war. And one of the positives that I've seen is the medical advances. I've also benefited from it with my prosthetic arm. I lost my arm about my wrist, and they gave me this cool hand that is myoelectric. It runs off the muscles on my arm. There's two sensors, one here and one here. My arm goes up to about right here. And when I flex my hand, the way I used to, it picks up the muscle impulses and sends a signal to the hand. And I couldn't do this before. So that's pretty cool. But it has many different features. It hooks up to Bluetooth. You can program it to do different things. There's even a little battery sensor, so you can see how much battery life you have left. It comes off. Kind of creepy. It was cool at Halloween. When I lost my hand that day, I thought, if I get out of here, I'm going to get a hook. And I actually did get a hook. I was a pirate for Halloween, and I had the official merchandise, if you will. My son loved it, but there's a bunch of devices that you could put on here for different things. And the intent was anything you did before or you wanted to do, they would find a way to adapt it. I have a full set of cutlery knives, open end wrenches, vice grips, you name it. I even tried out a basketball attachment. They had a golf attachment, which I had never played golf before. And I said, wow, I need to find a sport that I could play with my kids because football's out, baseball's out. I was right-handed, so it'd be difficult to do any of those tasks. And I said, golf is a sport I never played. I can only get better at. And you could play it till you're in the grave. And it opened me up to new things. I tried it out and I loved it. And I still play golf with my kids. And it's one of those things that I saw that even in the field, things that were being tested that weren't really FDA approved yet, but were needed to save lives of our troops. They were at the time back probably right around the time just before I got injured. They were doing the plasma that the medics would carry, and they realized how important it was to save the lives. And even the training that the medical teams, the medics and the surgeons and the PAs, everyone that was out there, it was so in depth that I watched one of my buddies. He got shot in the chest when we were on the border of Afghanistan and Pakistan. And we were a long helicopter ride away from help coming to get medevac or medical evacuation. And so this young specialist, less than maybe 2 years in the Army, performs a, oh shoot, what's the name of it? I'm blanking out on the name, but basically, in order to save this guy who's gotten this chest wound, he has to lay him on his back. He cut him open on his side under his armpit, and he's sticking his fingers into his airway, into his lungs, to give him an air tube. And he patched him all up, and he couldn't give him meds because of his condition. And the guy on the ground's actually looking at the medic, and saying, "Doc, whatever you're doing, stop. It hurts worse." And he didn't know at that time that he had his fingers inside his lungs. But he packaged him up. By the time the Blackhawks arrived and they put him on the bird with the flight surgeon and the crew on board, the crew was so shocked. They had never seen a field medic do surgery in the field like that, but it saved his life, and he probably would have otherwise died. And so I think a lot of the technology, not only from medical aspect, but a lot of the technology, you look at the drones today, a lot of those drones come from the same technology that they're starting to use drones that are about the size of your hand. And a lot of these compounds that we would go into, I wish we would have had it back in when I was in. They could take a look over the 20-foot wall and see what's inside, live footage, and not risking human life to go in there. Same with these IED drones that they go to do unexploded ordnance, that they go in to take care of these bombs, that they are able to drive in there, remote control. And it's amazing. The less human risk and the less human footprint that we need to leave and still get the mission complete is better. I don't know a whole lot about this Space Force thing, but everyone laughs and says, "Oh, well, the military Space Force," but it's a different dimension. You look at the wars of what if they shut down all of our satellites? I mean, people go crazy when they can't go outside. You take away all of our internets, all of our communications, it's going to cripple us. And so having that type of security to where we can protect our, our cyber systems is important. And I look at a lot of the things in the future are moving faster, and soldiers not only need to be strong, they need to be smarter. And so a lot of our folks that join our military, I tell them, your job in the military is important. It's unlike anything else. I said, even the person that works in the pay office that takes care of the pay clerk, I call them the pack clerk. I said, even their job's important. When I was deployed to Afghanistan, I had 4 kids. I was a young specialist. I was making maybe $670 every 2 weeks. And I knew the risk. I wasn't afraid of getting killed. What I was worried about while I was over there was how is mama paying the bills, keeping the lights on, keeping the food in the kids' mouths. And I thought about that pay clerk. And I said, please let them do their job right. Because if they mess up my pay and I don't get paid for a month, that's really going to hurt the family. And so everybody's job, everybody's role is extremely important. And it's stressful. It's very stressful. If you take your job seriously and you do it right, it is a stressful job. Because unlike working at Burger King where you mess up somebody's hamburger, they're like, oh, well, you put onions on it and I didn't want onions. No big deal. Here, we'll fix it. Well, these are people's lives on the line that you're dealing with. And sometimes you can't go back and fix mistakes. And that's the one thing that we try to learn is from our mistakes and from others' mistakes. And mistakes are going to be made. You try to minimize them. But learning from those mistakes is important. And that is one of the biggest things that we learned is that rehearsals, how extremely important it is to rehearse, to train as you fight, and to make it as real as possible. Some of the ways that they're able to simulate wounds in the field. So these medics, so some of these troops that are trained, first responders, that, hey, I could take care of things until the medic gets here because I've learned at least the basics. And that was one of the things that I learned that day when I lost my hand is at first I was in shock, but then I realized I know what to do because I've been trained. You have a severe amputation, you grab your tourniquet and you put a tourniquet on it, you tie it down and stop the bleeding. And it's one of those things that we have maybe 2 medics for every 40 people. And that's our unit specifically that we're fortunate to have. And the medic's not always going to be there. What if it's the medic that's injured? You got to be prepared to do the person's job to your right and to your left, and to do your boss's job should they go down. I think a lot of it too is the communication has changed. For good and for bad, I say that. You're starting to lose a little bit of the camaraderie because of cell phones. We'd go check on our guys every day in the barracks, make sure their rooms were clean. And now people are scattered around different barracks, and they've built such nice facilities that one guy shares a room usually with another guy, and they have separate individual rooms. They share a kitchenette and a bathroom. Well, the guy living in room A could be in Charlie Company. The guy living in room B could be Alpha Company, and they're on different time schedules. They may not see each other in an entire month. And so the communication between those two isn't good. And being a squad leader, you might have a guy in that building over there and another guy in a building way over there. And so instead of going over there to talk to them or grab them, you're texting or you're calling them. And you're not really seeing their room in which they live in and checking for those small little discipline issues of, okay, the way a person presents himself can tell you a lot. Well, do you show up with they changed it. You don't shine your boots anymore. That used to be one of the checks. And you see somebody that's normally clean, shaven, doing well, while they change their appearance, you know something's not right. And so in being able to see those visual aspects, you lose a little bit. And I went and talked at a fire, what do they call it? Not firemen's, but a fire person's, I don't know what the politically correct term is today, but it was a county graduation for a lot of the people that had completed the fire training to be firefighters. And at this graduation, I got to talk to a lot of the chiefs, and I'm asking them, well, what's your biggest challenge with the new recruits? And they said communication. They said a lot of the young guys, men and women, they want us. You send them. You've tried calling them, they won't answer. But 2 seconds later, you send them a text. They're like, "Ding!" They reply right away. Meanwhile, the older generation, you send them a text, they don't. They're like, "Hey, why don't you just call me? I don't want to do the texting bit." So, gapping that generational gap of adapting to get everyone uniform on the same page is a little bit challenging. But the great news is that there is technology that make things like this possible. The Zoom calls. We've actually been hosting one to do suicide prevention quite often during this COVID-19, because that's the one thing that we realized is isolation is not a good thing. And a lot of these people that have been around folks, and they miss that camaraderie that a lot of our veterans still need, that camaraderie, but they're not getting it. And to be able to reach out to them and check on them and see their face and see them in person is a good thing. I'm grateful for my service every day. There's tasks that are difficult. I haven't put on a tie in a while, but I struggle every now and then with my button. The very top button, doing it with my left hand is still hard. I had to get carpal tunnel surgery because I overused my left hand. But those surgeries and the doctors that are there have, I trust them, and they've been trying to do the things that have made my life easier. And I look at what I'm probably going to face in the future. Probably a knee replacement on my right knee. It's starting to go out. I actually have this buckle in my leg. When it starts to get painful, I dip down on my right side. My knee just gives out a little bit, and my wife actually calls it my pimp walk. But I know that's going to be something I'm going to face down the road. But I look at the veterans. I look at some of the folks that I know that have had them already, and I start asking the questions, so I'm prepared. Well, how does this work? How does this work? And it's getting better and better. One of the probably most fascinating parts of the medical technology that have come out of this war that I've seen is one of my great friends. He was actually the first quadruple amputee to survive from this war. And he's a young kid. He was 18, 19 at the time, and he lost one of his arms above the elbow and one below the elbow, both legs above the knee. And his brother became his 24/7 around the clock caregiver, feeding him, bathing him, changing him, everything. And he had gotten asked to be a part of a program and be a recipient of a double arm transplant. And so he would jokingly send out a text every New Year's, and he'd say, "I know this," or have his brother do it. He'd say, "I know this sounds horrible, but I hope somebody does something stupid because I need a set of new arms." And he ended up getting those arms. Well, first he went on the list, but the arms were too big for him. And so they had to put him back on another list. And he ended up getting a 16-year-old girl's arms. And it was great for us as as guys, we're not going to give them any slack. We're going to give them a hard time about it. So we'd go up to them and say, "Oh, your hands are so soft." Or we need to go to the bathroom and say, "Oh, pedophile." But that's the way we kept it in perspective, is to joke about it. And one of the greatest things I saw with a lot of these amputees that were severely injured, that were given amazing things like transplants and prosthetics that have changed their lives, is a lot of them have the greatest outlook on life, because they were so close to death that they now appreciate every day they have alive. And I tell folks all the time that every morning that I wake up and I open my eyes and I breathe air into my lungs, I'm grateful that I have another day, a chance to make a difference, a chance to impact others' lives every single day and to make my life better. Excuse me. And speaking of which, when I was asked to do this, I thought about it, and I didn't think about it very long. I wanted to, but when I was told that it was going to be today, today's my birthday, and I said, I can't think of a better way to spend the morning during my birthday sharing with you all the difference that you can make, and hoping that what I share with you helps impact your lives and the lives that you touch. I've had the opportunity to speak at graduations. I feel humbled. I spoke at William and Mary at one of their, I did a commencement speech at one of their graduations. I was asked by the old SecDef Gates, who I didn't, you don't tell the SecDef no, but I was nervous. I was extremely nervous because I'm still working on my degree. And when I went there and I did it, I'm looking out into this crowd and I'm looking at all these young faces and some older faces, and I'm thinking, wow, these kids, a lot of these kids that were younger than me, they got a jump start on life. They've already achieved a degree and I'm still working on mine. And I know I could probably make it the rest of my life without a degree, but it's always been a goal I set for myself at a young age, and I want to achieve that. I joked with my son when he graduated high school, my older son. I said, we're going to race to a degree. And of course, his graduation day, first thing he said to me when he came off that stage, "I beat you, I beat you, I made it." And I said, "I knew you would, because you're going full time, and that was the plan, was for you to have that goal of beating dad to a degree." But I said, "I bet you when I get mine, I'll still have a higher GPA." But that's the other thing, is holding people accountable, being responsible for your actions. And first thing I did when I made the dean's list, when I first started taking college courses, is I went and put it up on the refrigerator. And my 16-year-old son, who just got his last report card from the school, he outstanding. I went and taped it up on the refrigerator. And that's part of leadership, is rewarding them and acknowledging when they do great things, but also holding them accountable when they and teaching them to learn from their mistakes. And I look at, oh man, I live up near Seattle, and I look at all these things on the news, these protests and these riots and these taking down statues, and it's difficult, because we want our kids, our generations, to learn. And I understand some people look at things differently, but no matter how we look at things, we can't erase our bad past. All we can hope to is that people learn from it. If we try to erase everything that we don't like in our past, then our future generations won't have anything to learn from. Sometimes we got to teach them the good and the bad. I educated my son on this at a young age. I would get up in the morning and I would watch the news, and he would get up and I'd change it to cartoons and I'd go do stuff while he was getting ready for school. And one morning I didn't wake up early and went out into the living room, and he was there watching the news. And part of it was he wanted that connection to be able to talk to dad and on something dad was interested in. So he started watching it frequently, and he would talk to me even when I was on the road. Hey, Dad, did you see what happened over in India, or did you see what happened here in Tacoma? And it gave us something to converse about. But when I sat him down, I said, look, you can't just watch Fox News. You got to flip back and forth between CNN and Fox. I said, each one's going to try to spin you on their own take, and you got to make up your mind for yourself. I said, part of the problem, I think, in this country is that we segregate ourselves as a country. And we make people choose. Are you Republican or are you Democrat? And speaking of which, the census that just went out, they only thing that the census should measure is the number of people, in my eyes. That's the only thing that matters. I joke with folks and I tell them, I go down the list, I check other, and I write in trail mix. I say, because we're all Americans. And it doesn't matter your background. We're all here for the same reason, to be patriots and to support the communities in which we live in and raise our families the best we can. And I think that's what I liked Donald Trump's slogan, Make America Great. But it doesn't start at executive level. It starts with us in our communities, being good neighbors, helping others out. And President Obama, during my ceremony, he said that our heroes are all around us. And what I think he meant by that is that you could be a hero to anyone. It could be as simple as listening to their problems when they're having a bad day, helping them with something that they're helping them out. I remember people that would help me in school. I wasn't afraid to ask. I realized that it takes courage to say I have a weakness in this area. Well, talking about that top button, when I'd travel until I got the hang of it, I would go out in the hallway, have to find a cleaning lady and say, hey, can you help me put this top button on, or can you help me with my bow tie? Until you learn, you're going to need help. And that's the one thing I tell folks is since the day we're born, we're never alone in this world. That from the times we're babies and infants, there's been somebody there to feed you, clothe you, teach you. And as you move into school, you all, the teachers, teach us. And as we move into careers, we have supervisors, we have peers. And I said, you always have somebody to lean on. It's when you don't ask for help that you'll struggle on your own. And everyone in this world has had help with something at some point in their life. And knowing that you have, somebody's done something for you, you try to give it back to somebody else. One of my favorite quotes was from Ronald Reagan. And he said, we can't help everyone, but everyone can help someone. And I think that's extremely important, because once we start making our communities and our towns better places to live in, that spreads across the country. It will be great, because then we could travel and know that we're going somewhere safe, and hopes that the communities that we travel to are just as good as we've made our community back at home. And one of the things I think about when I think about teachers, first responders, all these people that selflessly serve others, I can't tell you who the quote was from, but it's also another one of my favorites. And it says, always show appreciation. What's taken for granted will eventually be taken away. Then you end up missing most what you least appreciated. And it scares me today I have numerous friends that are law enforcement. One's was combat injured. He had lost his leg in Iraq, just below the knee, and he medevaced out on helicopter before we were able to recover his limb. And I ended up carrying it in a sandbag the entire night. And he called me up about a month ago and he said, well, when he left the Army back in 2003 after losing his foot, he became a police officer. And he's been a police officer since then. And he said, I'm leaving. He said, I'm done being a cop. And it was a little hard to swallow because he was a great guy and he was an outstanding officer, and he set the examples for others to follow. And to lose somebody good like that, it's difficult because I look at a lot of our youth and how do we choose the careers that we choose in life? It's because somebody in our life that we've met along the way has inspired us to. And I look at a lot of our youth now and the way the police are being treated, it's tough to say what's going to inspire these young kids to join law enforcement and protect us. And I'm grateful for law enforcement and first responders every day because every single time I deployed, they were still there right at home, taking care of my family, taking care of my community. Even when I was home, they were still there on the job, taking care of my family and our community. We deployed, it was overseas. Yeah, the threat was there, but the threat's always there for a lot of the law enforcement every time they make a vehicle stop. And so I know I'm getting a little off topic, but it's something that's current. And it's something that we need to talk about, that even in the military, it's such a big organization that we have, it's like an apple orchard. And you're going to have a few rotten apples in an orchard. It doesn't mean you burn the whole orchard. You take care of those few rotten apples. And I think the thing that I love most is that there's enough good people in this world that are willing to give you the shirt off their back, willing to stop and help you out, willing to lend you their ear and listen when you're having a difficult time. That we need to continue that, to inspire these young kids to grow up and be those types of people, that we're all together and we're not different. And it's greater than any amount of pay, helping somebody else out and bettering yourself every day to be able to do your best is what brings the most pride in it. Myself as a parent, seeing my kids grow up to be good young adults, and that can't ask for more. That's success in my eyes. Knowing that your child's not going to be a drain on society, but they're going to contribute to it. I know I've been talking for quite a bit. I do know that we have a few more minutes. I wanted to see if I could go ahead and open it up for questions.
Sure. Actually, yeah, we had the teachers submit questions beforehand, Leroy. So one of them that kind of follows up on what you were just talking about. Do you think some sort of mandatory service should be required of all young Americans?
Yes, and I say that because not everybody qualifies for military service. And so even some people that want to sort of get turned down because of medical reasons or whatever, but we rush our kids to grow up too fast. A lot of kids that graduate high school are not prepared to go to college. And that's why you see a lot of them their freshman year trying to grow up. I think if we mandated 2 years of civil service of some sort, that our children would try harder, or they would learn those values more, and they would learn what it's like to serve something greater than themselves. And I talked about how we segregate, and I look at education that way. A lot of times we talk about China and different places being their kids are smarter, blah blah blah. Well, if we took all the scholarships and we made them available to everyone, you would have kids that would try harder and not say, well, I'm just going to go for the Hispanic scholarships because the pool's smaller. They would realize they have to actually study. And part of that process of serving, I think, would be great is you take the whatever top percentage of the kids that are smart and say, you're exempt from the 2-year service. You could go on to school. And I think that's the way we would have a better community. And it doesn't have to be military service. Like I said, it could be civil service of some sort, just giving back to your community in some way and develop programs. But I do think that that would be something great for our youth to endure.
Okay, thank you. Another teacher asks, basically, who are the people that impress you? Who's sort of a role model that stands out for you now?
Oh, wow. That's a very difficult question. I have so many people that I look up to and that I consider friends and that I consult on different topics. And that's actually one of the hardest questions for me is when people say, how do you feel being called a hero? And I say, I have heroes too, so I guess they're superheroes. But I would say I look up to anybody that's willing to do the right thing. I don't know if look up's the right word, but I respect anybody that's willing to take the hard right over the easy wrong. Anybody that's willing to have integrity and do something that they know may never get recognized for, but makes a difference. So those are the people I look up to. Nope, I kind of can't hear you.
Zoom during COVID.
Nope,
Periodically.
I could hear you. I missed that first part.
Okay. So I just said I lost you for a minute too. I said this is the joys of using Zoom during COVID. But anyhow, the next question, and I think it's an interesting one, just because so many recipients, after they become recipients, there's a life beyond that, and teachers are asking, what have been some of your highest priorities, post duty, post your service time?
One of my big ones right now has been suicide prevention. I think that the numbers are different depending on who you ask, who takes the surveys and stuff. But one is too many. And I've lost a couple of friends during COVID that have committed suicide. And I continue to push on that pretty heavily, as well as inspiring young kids and working on my education and being dad. Those are my priorities. And husband to my wife, Ashley.
Okay, thank you. I guess could you talk? A couple teachers were interested in finding out a little bit more about your role as special liaison to the U.S. Special Operations Command Care Coalition.
Yes.
Part of your service.
That was a job I took on. There was SOCOM, Special Operations Command, had these liaisons throughout the United States and one in Europe, and they ended up having one in Afghanistan and Iraq as well. And what it was designed to do is, because the command team can't always, when you medevac out, they're still fighting the war. There would be somebody bedside tracking you that would be there to meet you and make sure you're getting the best care and taken care of throughout your trip back to the U.S. and while you're back home. So you either transition out of the military or you go back to work. in the service. And there was a gentleman that was down in Texas when I got injured, and he took care of my family. He took care of me. He would make sure they had transportation when they would come in the airports, made sure my pay was good and that I was getting the best care possible. And I watched him take care of people and their families, but not only mine, others. Not only SOCOM, he was taking care of anybody that needed help. And he actually inspired me to take that job. I was going to get out of the Army, and I said, you know what? I may not be able to jump out of airplanes anymore. I might not be able to rappel out of helicopters, but I could do that job. I could help those that are wounded, ill, and injured, and through their recovery and their families. And so my role, that was part of my favorite time, was helping others through that recovery process that I had been through. It's what we do. Like I said, the veterans that have gone before us, they have the wealth of knowledge. And one of the great things that happened, quick story, we're in rehab, and we're in the gym, and these kids are working out. A lot of them amputees, special gym for us. And this one young kid lost his leg just above his knee, and the physical therapist has him on his back. She's stretching his thigh. And he's screaming like crazy. Oh, it hurts, it hurts. And he's getting louder and louder. People are starting to look, and they're stopping working out, and they're like, holy cow, like, that guy's really screaming. And so I walked over and I said, can I talk to him for a second? She said, sure. I said, she walked away, and I said, look, man, a severe injury like this it's going to hurt. You're going to have pain the rest of your life, and you got to learn how to deal with it so the medicines can help you later on in life. I said that everybody in here has gone through what you've gone through. And I said, it's difficult. Give me 1 second. I said, but I have a little trick that'll help you out when you're facing those hard times of adversity or pain. I said, you take a normal big pen like you get at the Marriott or whatever, Holiday Inn Express. You take off the cap, place that to the side. Sorry, I'm going to use my teeth. Take off the little plunger cap on the back, put that to the side. Pull out the ink, put that with the 2 caps. This one has an extra cap for the tip. Put those all aside. I said, then you take the cylinder or tube, whatever you want to call it, and use it like a straw and suck it up. And he smiled, and he looked around the room at that point and realized that he wasn't alone, that there was other people that had gone through this same procedure, and that we joke a lot of times saying, suck it up. And there's times you can't suck it up, that you need help, but it made him smile. And that's exactly what it's all about, is helping others.
Can you talk a little bit about what were kind of the biggest challenges for you returning to civilian life?
Oh, wow. Well, the one thing that I look at is being a younger recipient from this war, not younger anymore, but more current. That I look at what we have as far as technology. A lot of recipients received a medal from the president. It might have been in their local paper, might have been in a snapshot in the local paper in DC. You still got me?
Yeah, I do. I can hear you. You're frozen, but I can hear you.
Yeah, you froze too. But that was it. And nowadays, it's every single news station that's covering it. It's all over the map. It's constantly in the public's eye. And at first, that was the hardest part for me, was going to the grocery store with my family. I would get stopped, and people would want to talk, and my family would be standing there, and I knew that they wanted to walk away, and we learned to deal with it. They'll keep shopping, and I'll catch up with them later. But because I don't want to not take the time to show somebody the respect, because I know if a recipient had given me 1 second of their time to even say hello, I would have been honored. And so I want to give that to others. That's the other side of this, is that I wish we were all there, that I could take this off and hand it to you all to hold and pass it around and tell you that it is, a lot of recipients say it's a heavy medal to wear, and it gets lighter on me the more people I share it with. It belongs to all of us, those who have served, are serving, and especially those who pay the ultimate sacrifice. And so I think that's one of the best things, though, that giving back. And that's the hard part, is the Leroy pie chart, the time for family, time for giving back. The Leroy slice of the pie has gotten very thin. And so I'm now learning how to open that back up so I can focus on myself a little bit more.
And that kind of leads, we're almost out of time, but it actually segues into a question that popped into my own head for everybody else in the audience. When Leroy first got on, there's a ton of sun out today, so we had to close those blinds behind him. But which is, you're not going to see the view. I looked out and saw that view, and I just, it's probably a question you usually don't get. How important is that forest to you, of just being able to walk around and think?
Oh, I'll tell you, there's the two most therapeutic places I've found for myself mentally is on the water or on the golf course.
Yeah.
But I'm going to take you to the view.
Good, because I saw it, I was jealous. I wanted to be out there.
So, interesting story is, we were at the fair and they were selling these flagpoles. I think it's like a 25-foot flagpole. And I ended up getting one with my son. I was flying out the next day early in the morning. And so at 9:30 at night, coming back from the fair, we stopped at Lowe's or Home Depot, whatever, got a bag of cement. I took him out back and had him dig the hole, and we put in our flagpole. And it's I couldn't even tell you. I don't know if it's authorized by our HOA or not. But the nice part is I'm president of the HOA, so they kind of volunteered me for it. And one day, and they said, "Congratulations, you're our new president." And I was like, "Oh crap!" I said, "My first business of order is to dissolve the HOA." And they said that you can't do that. And I said, "Fine, I'll spend the next 3 years trying to get impeached." But I have good neighbors. I can't complain. But I'm very grateful for the life I have. And I look every day, like I said, I wake up and I'm grateful. And I hope to give back to others, make their lives enriched, and continue to progress.
Thank you very much, Leroy. That was great, as usual.
Thank you.
You're going to be back and join us at 1 o'clock, correct?
I am.
Okay.
I'm looking forward to it.
Then go get another cup of coffee, and for you out there, it's probably breakfast. For everybody else over here on the East Coast, it's lunch. But we'll see you back here at 1 o'clock. Okay.
All right. See you all soon. Thanks. Enjoy lunch.
Amazing.
Thanks, Jason.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.